Today's SAT question, again, looks confusing, but we've actually done this kind of stuff before. The main thing, again, about the SAT is that you have to understand a lot of the questions that they ask you are within your reach. You just have to make sure you don't shut down and just randomly guess something. It says, based off of this system of equations, which is what you call it, which of the following ordered pairs satisfies the system of equations above? And so when you look at this, we're looking for something that when we plug in x and plug in y, we get 0, and that we take 3 times x minus 2 times y equals 10. I would focus on this one first because I usually try to give you something nice. And if it's going to equal 0, that means that those two numbers should honestly be opposite of each other. For example, I know that 3 plus negative 2 is not 0. And because it's multiple choice, one of the things you should do is always eliminate answers that don't make sense. Since that does not equal 0, it can't be A. 2 plus negative 2 is 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is also 0, but negative 2 plus negative 2 is not 0. That's actually negative 4. And what that does for me is it eliminates it down to 2 options. So I don't need to check that anymore. What I will do is check this with the bottom equation. So 3 times 2 minus 2 times negative 2 equals 10 is what that says, and we'll see if this is true. 3 times 2 is 6. Remember, this is a negative 2 times a negative 2, which makes a positive 4. And 6 plus 4 is 10, which means that since this is true, that your answer is B. The other one doesn't work because when you go to work it out, you get negative 6 minus 4, which is actually negative 10 equals 10. So yes, your answer is B, not A. Other than that, moving on to this, the second day of doing the multi-step equations or inequalities. There's not much new information in today's work. It's just going to focus on the rare occasions where the variables cancel out. In the last unit, we saw that, and we found that there were 2 answers that resulted. There was no solution in all real numbers or something like that. Look at the 2 examples of the tricky problems from last unit that we saw, and this is pretty much what we're going to kind of see today. Again, this is simplified as much as it can be, so we just get 3x plus 5. But this turns into 3x plus 6. Now that we have everything simplified, we go to solve and we subtract 3x from both sides. And notice what happens. Those x's go away. These x's go away. 5 comes down, 6 comes down, and this is a false statement. And what we learned last time is when it was a false statement that our answer is no solution. Because no matter what you plug in, it will never be true. And that was, again, one of the things we saw last unit as a quick review. Another question here, we can simplify this to make 6x minus 24 equals, we can't do any more with that, so 6x minus 24. We then can solve to subtract 6x from both sides. That goes away, this goes away. Negative 24 comes down on the left and right, and since this is a true statement, the answer was all real numbers. So those were the 2 things that we saw were no solution. I think they actually called it identity back then, but they all mean the same thing. They just mean that no matter what you plug in, it's a whole bunch of answers that work for that question. Today what we're going to have are some similar situations, but it's just going to be with inequality symbols. The reaction is the same as before. If the statement is true, then we reply with all real numbers. Otherwise, we respond with the answer of no solution. Let's look at some practice and review questions before we move on to the computer work. This is very quick, very straightforward. Simplifying the left, I cannot do anything. 4y plus 6 stays. This, though, can be simplified. Remember that we must switch signs here, so it's less than 5y minus 6. Then you bring down your 4y plus 6 again. This here can be simplified more. 5y minus y is 4y minus 6. From there we go to solve. We subtract 4y from both sides. Those cancel out. These cancel out. 6 comes down. The sign stays the same. And negative 6 comes down. Now this is not an equal sign, but what happens is if this is a true statement, then we give the same reaction. Is 6 bigger than negative 6? The answer to that is yes. It's true, so this again is all real numbers, as you would write shorthand in math. All real numbers, because that was true, a true statement on that. All right. Another one to say solve 9 times e plus 2 equals all this. So again, we can simplify the left by doing 9e plus 18. We can simplify the right by multiplying here. 3 times 6 is 18. This is done, but I think I can still do more over here by putting 6 and 3 together. So 9e plus 18 less than or equal to 9e plus 18. Subtract 9e from both sides because everything is simplified. 18 comes down the left, 18 comes down the right, and now you have to make a decision. Anytime the variables go away, you have to make a decision. Is this a true or false statement? Well, 18 is not smaller than 18, but remember this means equal to, and since they are equal, the answer is again true, and so it'll be all real numbers as your answer there. So getting into some review stuff here, I think we'll see. I do know that this is a review for us because we've seen this kind of question. We just haven't seen it this messy before. But let's look at this question and recognize that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms, and we don't like fractions. And that we can get rid of fractions by multiplying everything by the same number. So remember, if we have a 3 on the bottom, we can simply multiply every term by 3. And what that does for us is it cancels these 2 out, which gives us 4s. This turns into minus 9. Copy the sign. This turns into 3s. These 2 3's cancel, bringing down a plus 2. These 2 3's cancel, bringing down minus s. Again, that is a trick that we learned a long time ago, but you can actually apply it to bigger problems than this. Now you can simplify these 2 things here. 4s minus 9 therefore is less than 2s plus 2. And now that everything is simplified, we solve as usual. Move the smaller variable over. Move the number by adding it or using its opposite. Since that was negative, we use a positive, so 2s is less than 11. And then divide by 2. Getting s is less than 11 over 2. Now, of course, if we were going to solve this, it would be an open circle pointing to the left, but this just says solve. Although the ones on your test and quiz are going to say solve and graph, just keep in mind, again, that just says solve, so we didn't have to do anything. I think the safest thing to do would be to always graph it. That way you don't miss any extra points if they should happen to pop up. And D. Here, negative 2 times 0.5. Again, if you don't know, just get your calculator. Negative 2 times 0.5 gives us negative 1. Negative 2 times negative 4t is plus 8t. Copy the sign. This makes negative 12. I'm sure this will be plus, but I'm not sure what. 3 times 3.5 gives us 10.5. And from there we have to go, 10.5t. And so from there we have to go with our work. That is simplified. This is also simplified. The smaller of the two is 8, so we subtract 8t from both sides. Negative 1 comes down. 10.5 minus 8 gives us 2.5. From there I will now add 12 because that 12 is negative. Getting 11 is greater than 2.5t. And then from there I'll divide by 2.5. Getting 4.4. Now some of you will say, well, why did you get to use decimals in this answer? Why is it okay for me to use decimals in this answer? And that's because there are decimals in the question. Notice a decimal here and a decimal there, which opens it up. Now the second thing we notice is that this actually cannot be our final answer. T has to be moved over to the other side. I think though on a computer they don't make you flip it around, but for me and for the math that you really want to be doing, you do want to flip that as often as you can to make sure it's on the proper side. Other than that, get the Math Excel done for the day. It is another assignment here, and a lot of those, or some of those, will have the no solution versus all real numbers option. So make sure you know what you're doing there. And again, if you're having questions on anything, please just bring your computers over or write down the question and bring your paper over. I can help you really quickly, or Miss Hines can help you out really quickly, and we can get these things done. Other than that, your sheet today again has some review questions on it, so you might need to ask questions, but let's just go ahead and get to work.